This is the Sri Ramana Maharshi satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke. I'm not a guru or a teacher. I just love Ramana's teaching and so want to share it. Today I'll be reading from and commenting on the Ashtavakra Gita, chapter 8. In these verses, Ashtavakra speaks of bondage and liberation. When the mind desires or grieves things, accepts or rejects things, is pleased or displeased by things, this is bondage. When the mind does not desire or grieve, accept or reject, become pleased or displeased, liberation is at hand. If the mind is attached to any experience, this is bondage. When the mind is detached from all experience, this is liberation. When there is no I, there is only liberation. When I appears, bondage appears with it. Knowing this, it is effortless to refrain from accepting or rejecting. Let's explore these verses. Ashtavakra speaks of bondage and liberation. Since vasanas, your tendencies, play such a big part in these ideas of bondage, I will comment on vasanas for each verse, in addition to the comments on the verse and its significance for your practice. Chapter 8, verse 1. When the mind desires or grieves things, accepts or rejects things, is pleased or displeased by things, this is bondage. This verse highlights how the mind creates bondage by getting attached to desires, grief, acceptance, rejection, pleasure, and displeasure. When your mind is entangled in these emotional responses, you become bound to the cycles of suffering and joy, unable to experience true freedom. Bondage includes both attachment and aversion. Both tie your sense of happiness to the entanglement. Vasanas reinforce desires and aversions, making it challenging to break free from the cycle of emotional reactions. These tendencies can keep you trapped in a state of bondage as your mind continually oscillates between likes and dislikes. The vasana is based on a false idea about what brings you lasting happiness. Cultivating mindfulness and self-awareness helps you recognize the influence of vasanas. By observing your thoughts and reactions, you can start to see patterns and understand how these deep-seated tendencies operate. This is the beginning of eliminating the entanglement of the vasana. For your spiritual practice, this verse emphasizes the need to observe your mind's reactions and recognize how these responses trap you. By becoming aware of this process, you can begin to loosen the grip of these emotional and habitual responses and move towards liberation. Verse 8.2. When the mind does not desire or grieve, accept or reject, become pleased or displeased, liberation is at hand. This verse teaches that true liberation comes when the mind stops its habitual patterns of desiring, grieving, accepting, rejecting, and reacting emotionally. When your mind becomes calm and detached, you can experience liberation. Deep-seated vasanas can disrupt your efforts to maintain equanimity. Persistent impressions from past experiences can trigger automatic emotional responses, making it difficult to achieve the detached and calm state described in this verse. Your mind will continue to reach out for moments of fleeting happiness. Consistent meditation can purify the mind and reduce the influence of vasanas. By calming the mind and turning inward, you create space for the deeper awareness of your true nature, beyond the conditioned patterns of the mind. This verse is crucial for your spiritual journey. It points to the goal of achieving a steady, peaceful mind. It encourages you to cultivate equanimity and detachment, paving the way for liberation from suffering. 8.3. If the mind is attached to any experience, this is bondage. When the mind is detached from all experience, this is liberation. This verse highlights that attachment to any experience, whether positive or negative, leads to bondage. True freedom comes when your mind remains detached from all experiences, not clinging to or rejecting any of them. Freedom from your reactive mind is real freedom. Freedom is plunging into the peace that you are. Vasanas can cause strong attachments to certain experiences, whether pleasurable or painful. These attachments bind the mind, preventing it from achieving the detachment necessary for a deep sense of peace. The ingrained habits of seeking pleasure and avoiding pain are manifestation of these vasanas. Regular practice of detachment and non-attachment can weaken the hold of vasanas. This involves consciously letting go of desires and aversions and remaining equanimous in the face of various experiences. Direct experience of yourself weakens the hold of vasanas. The objects of the vasanas are temporary and transient. The experience of yourself is something that is always present and not transient. This verse serves as a reminder to remain unattached to transient experiences. By doing so, you can achieve a state of liberation where you are free from the cycles of attachment and aversion. Version 8.4. When there is no I, there is only liberation. When I appears, bondage appears with it. Knowing this, it is effortless to refrain from accepting and rejecting. This verse emphasizes that the sense of a separate I is the root of bondage. When the ego dissolves, liberation naturally arises. Knowing this, you can effortlessly stop the patterns of acceptance and rejection. Does it require effort to just be happy, as is your nature? Vasanas reinforce the sense of a separate I by continually shaping your thoughts and actions based on past conditioning. This persistent ego identity sustains the illusion of separateness, making it difficult to realize the state of liberation where the sense of I dissolves. Engaging in self-inquiry, as taught by Ramana Maharshi, can help you trace back these tendencies to their root in a sense of a separate self. Investigating the reality of the I thought and seeking the source of this I can lead to a dissolution of the ego and its associated vasanas. When you truly know that the ego does not exist, it was always just imaginary, then ego loses its power. This verse points directly to the dissolution of the ego as the path to liberation. It encourages you to question the sense of a separate self and realize your true nature beyond the ego. The basis for this realization is self-knowledge, found through meditation and self-inquiry. These verses from the Ashtavakra Gita collectively emphasize the importance of detachment and dissolution of the ego for achieving liberation. They guide you to recognize and transcend the mind's habitual patterns of attachment and aversion, leading to true freedom and inner peace. And remember, your insights can greatly enhance the spiritual growth with the study of these verses. And now a video from Nome, Beyond Body, Mind, and Ego.
In the quest to realize absolute being, what you are seeking to know, you are. And the inquiry to know the self consists in the destruction of the falsely assumed individuality, which is abidance as that very absolute being. In worshiping God, the Supreme Lord of the universe, what you worship, you are. And the devotion or worship consists of the dissolution of the falsely supposed separate individuality, leaving the infinite to remain as it perpetually is. Just inquire deeply into your own true nature. Discern how it is not possible, in truth, for you to be a body, or a mind, or an ego entity. How could an objectively perceived, sense-perceived, sporadically occurring thing called the body be you? You who are of the nature of being and consciousness and bliss. How could the attributes of a body be your attributes? Birth, death, active, inactive, and so forth and so on. The connection, the false connection, that seems to tie together yourself of the nature of being, consciousness, bliss, with a body, is ignorance. If just that much ignorance is given up, abandoned in the light of clear knowledge, what troubles would you have? What veils would there be to cover the innate bliss of the being consciousness that you are? Thinking may be useful for dealing with other thoughts, but of what use can it be in knowing the consciousness, which is the solitary knower of all the thoughts? None of the thoughts know you. You know all of them. How could there possibly be a connection, a binding that connects you to the mind? Free of a body, free of a mind, not defining your very existence in terms of these things. What remains of you? Beyond the body, the mind and the ego, the last being purely imagination. What remains is your true existence, which is what you are always. Cease to misidentify as a body, as a mind, as an individual. There is then no limit, no bondage. There is then no reality apart from the self. There is then nothing else existing at any time. Just oneself, yourself, naturally eternal, innately infinite. every idea of being bound, every idea of being limited in any way, as something distinct or apart from the absolute reality of being, consciousness, bliss, Brahman, is merely a case of misidentification, taking yourself to be an I, a mind, a body. Then once having mistaken oneself to be an I, a mind, and a body, trying to figure out what is real, or how to get to the reality, or how to find God, or how to reach the self, as if that self, the reality, or God, were something far away, or apart from you. Dissolve the false definitions of you, and that which you're hoping to find is self-evident as your very existence, as continuous as your very existence. If the blissful truth is what you want, dive inwardly, deep, in this way.
All right, and now we will take a few minutes and inquire. You exist. Notice that you exist, and you know you exist. Now, inquire, investigate within yourself. Can I observe my mind's reactions without getting entangled in them? How do I cultivate a calm and detached mind. How do my vasanas influence my reactions and emotions in daily life? How can I weaken the hold of these deep-seated tendencies? Who am I? What am I? What is the nature of my existence? All right. And let's close with our chant. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Om. Peace, peace, peace.
Nothing like a little the Ashtavakra Gita to realize how much bondage there is here.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody is suffering, feel that suffering for them.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny that we're bound by a rope of our own making. You know, that's one of the things that's funny about this.
Yeah, totally made up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So these reminders are grace.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. And it still seems like, for me anyway, such a big part of the practice is just noticing this stuff the mind does.
Yeah.
And it seems like gradually it loses a little bit of its sense of reality. I know it's just a show. You know, but sometimes I get pretty involved in that show,
Yeah.
and I know that's trouble.
Yeah.
You know, and we being humanity, have had these teachers telling us this stuff for thousands of years, but it doesn't seem like we catch on too fast. At least speaking for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So these little satsangs are essential.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And certainly I remember prior to satsangs, I was still interested in all of this stuff, but really what I had for my teacher was my own mind and ego.
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
You know, I had some good experiences, but it never went that deep, and didn't have the same kind of potential for transformation.
Yeah. It's got to be the death of the experiencer.
Yes, yes,
And right now it's just injured.
anyway, it's good to be together, and uh, we'll see you next week. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you very much.
Have good inquiry.
Thank you.
In 40 verses on reality, Ramana Maharshi explains the nature of the self, the ultimate reality, and self-inquiry. My new book, with my comments and inquiry questions, opens these teachings up and brings them into your practice and experience. Available now from Amazon. Link in the video description. These videos bring Ramana's teachings into your direct experience. Click subscribe to see more. Click thumbs up to like. and send questions and start a dialogue with a comment.